Good morning, gentlemen. All right. Welcome to another Bloodhound Workshop. Let's see. Well, not too many people in the room quite yet, so hopefully some more will join us here shortly in the next couple of minutes. Let's see here. So we do have a emailed in question to get today's workshop started. All right, and then after that, I'll take your guys' live questions in the Q&A window there. So, let's see. Also, I do still have a little bit of a lingering cough here. So just so if you don't hear me, if all of a sudden I go muted, it's not an issue with your audio. It's just, I will try and mute myself before I have to cough if I do, and most likely I will. So yeah, hopefully this should be the last of that cold I had last week and be done with it. I'll be glad. Let's see here. Anything else? Let's see. All right, no, not that I can think of. So, actually, let me see who's in the room here. All right, I believe I recognize all the names in the room here, but just in case, let me ask if there's anybody new to these workshops here or fairly new to these workshops. And the question is, would you like to hear the workshop introduction, right? So basically, the workshop introduction is I'll explain, what goes on in these workshops, what we do, what we do not do, and also I'll explain how the recordings work. And then lastly, I'll explain what indicators I can install into my machine if you have, specific questions about custom or third-party indicators out there, right? So if anybody would like to hear the workshop introduction, let me know, and I'll get that out of the way first. Otherwise, let's see here, we'll jump into the first question here from Paul. All right, so we have a screenshot here that was sent in with this question, which helps tremendously here because I actually got conflicting screenshots emailed in about this question here from two different people here. So yeah, so it's really good, if you have a question, and it's trading terminology is all over the place. So a screenshot obviously exactly identifies, exactly what you're trying to do there. So the question is, how do we identify, right, a two-legged pullback to a moving average? So in this case, the 21 EMA, right? So here's a great example here, right? So we have a trend run, right, away from our moving average, right? And then we get a two-legged pullback to that moving average. And hopefully, right, the key is a bounce off of that pullback to the mean. So, all right, so here what's expected is a long signal on the bar that touches the moving average there, right? So a long signal there. And then tomorrow we'll take these signals and demonstrate how to set up a stop entry order here. So let's see here. All right, yeah, it doesn't say specifically what order type, but this first paragraph here, implies that, yeah, you're placing an order one tick above the high of this signal bar there. So that would be a stop entry order to buy, right? So we'll take care of all that in tomorrow's Blackbird workshop there, right? So, also, if yeah, so if the market, if the bars, you know, let's see here, keeps moving down here, then cancel that order here. Right. But also, yeah, but also if that high of the bars that are touching, again, this is the Blackbird part, will adjust that stop entry order there. So, all right, but for today, the Bloodhound portion is to identify this two-legged pullback to the EMA. All right, so now this is a difficult pattern to find here. So thankfully, I did find one here. Let's see, how many days did I go back? 23rd. All right, yeah, so this was 2 days ago here. So, and yeah, roughly lunchtime there, we actually found one here, right? So we got this nice trend run, right, away from the moving average. So this is our EMA 21, right? And then we can see a two-leg pullback here. So I have the EMA obviously on the chart, and I have two other indicators as well. So I have the swing trend indicator on here, just so we can visualize these legs on here. And then also I have the swing highs and lows indicator, right? So the swing highs and lows is what actually identifies when a leg of a swing run or a leg of a zigzag line is locked in, right? So once the end point, right, of that swing point is locked in, then the swing highs and lows starts plotting that value, because the swing line or the zigzag line has started moving the other direction, and so an upswing is starting to develop, which means that this down swing line has been locked in and a swing point is identified. So we're using the swing highs and lows to actually identify those locked in swing lines there. All right. Actually, I guess I should pull up my indicator window here, right? So again, the swing trend is just on there just purely so we can visualize this. But what Bloodhound will be utilizing is the swing highs and lows to identify when those zigzag lines, right, or their swing points are actually locked in. So, and let's see here. Okay, yeah. So that should do it. So let's get Bloodhound open here. And first thing is let's put in today's file name for today's workshop. All right, 25. There we go. There. All right, so now we can start going to work here. Let's see. So I'm going to rename our logic template here. All right, so this is a two-leg pullback. Yeah, I guess what the heck, might as well spell it all out. There you go, to the EMA 21. So what is the first portion, the first part of this pattern here? Right, well, basically it's the market, moving away, right, this long trend right here. So let's identify that portion first. All right, and so we can see that basically we have a whole bunch of bars where, in this case for a short signal, let's go ahead and mark that. Yeah, so we're going to expect a short signal right there, right, the bar that's touching the EMA there, right? And so prior to that, right, all the highs of all these bars, right, are below the EMA there. Right. So let's identify that condition. So we're going to use this over and over and over again here, right? So if it's a long bounce, then basically the low price is going to be above the EMA, right? So if it's a short, the high price. So so to name this, right, we're using the low price for long bounces and the high price for short bounces, and we're just making sure that it is actually above or below the EMA 21 there. And yeah, you know, I guess just for good measure, let's make sure that they're at least one tick above or below the EMA 21. So, you know, this is a little subjective there. And it might accidentally kill some signals, right? So for example here, right, so this zigzag back, you know, what happens a lot, let's see if I can find an example here. Yeah, what happens a lot, actually no, that's not a good example. All right, well, we have to use our imagination here. So let's say this is the trend run away from the EMA. It's, you know, it's very short, right? But here's the zigzag back to the EMA, right? What happens a lot is after the first leg, right, the price quite often penetrates the EMA or the moving average there, right? So that nullifies, you know, this two-leg pullback there, you know, by this. And so, you know, the point I'm making about this one tick is that it's possible that, right, that this swing point here could technically be less than a tick away from the EMA, right? Because the EMA doesn't move in tick increments, right? That the EMA could be half a tick away from that swing point, right? So that gap could be half a tick. You know, and so again, you have to ask yourself, you know, how perfect of a pattern do you want here? You know, should this point have a minimum distance away, right, as you're defining what this pattern looks like? All right, these are all very subjective terms here. Yeah, so when I use this one tick separation, what that means is this point here has to be one tick away from the EMA in order for this pattern to be validated, right? So if this point gets within a tick away, then this two-leg pullback gets nullified and there won't be a signal there, right? So, okay, so let's finish setting up this comparison solver here. All right, so we're comparing price to the EMA. So input A is going to be, we're going to change that to price. And so again, for the longs, we want the lows above, right? The low price is above the EMA. So let's just select the low price, and then the shorts are going to be the opposite, right? The high price. And then input B is going to be our EMA. So let's plug that in there. Here. Oh, maybe I didn't quite. Oh, there we go. All right, just give it a moment for the first time. All right, there's our EMA. Put in the 21 period. Call it good. And then the comparison rules here. All right, so already we can see when the lows are above, right, we get a long output, right, in preparation for a possible long bounce. And then when the highs are below the EMA, right, we're getting a short output here. And here's where I'm going to put that one tick separation requirement here. And let's change this from points to ticks, like so. And there we go. And there, actually, we can see, right? This bar here used to have a short output on it, but that high is actually one tick away from there. So, yep, so it wasn't included. Okay, so here we go. So now we've have something here to kind of identify, right, that we have price below or above. And so now what you have to figure out is there any kind of minimum length that you need this first run to have, right, before the pullback there, right? So again, that's subjective. So I'm just going to put some kind of a minimum kind of value in there. And to do that, I'm going to use the signal counter here. All right, so we're going to count all these bars, right, that have a short output here. And let's say maybe 10, I guess 10 ought to be good enough there. All right, and so there we have it. So we have 10 bars here, right? So that helps us kind of figure, helps us prevent a situation where, yeah, I'll kind of go back to this kind of sloppy price action here. You know, it'll help prevent something like an extremely short little extension here before the pullback there, right? So that'll help identify these longer moves with that double pullback there, and kind of it'll help prevent any false signals through, you know, this kind of slop here. So, you know, and again, you know, maybe this is okay, you know, for generating a signal during this. And so in which case, you know, you can just shorten the number of bars required there. So I put in 10. To me, that seems pretty short there. You know, I don't know, maybe we should knock it down to 8. So, you're right. So if I knock it down to 8, yeah, actually look at that, bingo, right there. We actually, now, we do actually, you're right. So from, let's see, where is it? So from this bar, so yeah, we can see this bar here looks like it's could be touching the EMA, but it's definitely less than a tick away, right? So starting from this bar going forward, right, we now actually have 8 bars, you know, where the pullback could occur there, right? All right, so let's just put in 8. I'm gonna name this here. There we go. There. And oh, also, I want to keep the look back period matching the count there. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. So one thing we could do here, just kind of thinking to myself here, is if it's acceptable, you know, for this, yeah, this is not, all right, let's go back here. Yeah, so if it's acceptable for this point to be, you know, less than 1 tick away from the EMA here, right? So we can see, right here, we have an 8 bar count, right? And then we have, right? And so all these bars, you know, as long as we have an 8 bar minimum count, then the signal counter is going to give us a short output saying, hey, all these bars are at least 1 tick below the EMA, right? And we've had 8 of them at the beginning, right? But then if this point here gets within 1 tick of the EMA, right, the signal counter stops the output, actually, as we can see right there. And stretch this out a little bit. Yeah, bingo, right there. So this bar is underneath the EMA, but it's less than a tick away. And so the signal counter turns off. So regarding this swing point here, if it's okay for that to be less, what we can do is with the signal counter, we can say, all right, we want 8 bars minimum, but it's okay if one of those bars, so within our look back periods, if we increase that, we can say, all right, it's okay if one of these bars gets less than a tick. And so now we can see right here, right, this bar is less than a tick away, but it's okay because the last 8 bars were 1 tick below the EMA. Yeah, right. So, so again, it just depends on exactly, how you want to define this pattern, and what kind of conditions would violate this pullback pattern there. So, all right. So, yeah. So so again, if this point needs to have that 1 tick of separation, or whatever it is, maybe you want 2 ticks of separation, right? So if you want 2 ticks, then you adjust the comparison solver here, right? So this is what has the tick of separation there inside the comparison rules, right? So if you do want that absolute separation to be adhered to, then the look back period and the counting are going to match exactly, right? But if it's okay if one bar kind of violates that separation, then we can just increase the look back by 1. So yeah, actually there we go. So this bar again now no longer has a short output because it violated that 1 tick of separation there. All right. So yeah. So again, it's not my job to define this shape here, so I'm going to leave it a little more liberal, and I'm just going to increase it to 9 and call it good there. So, all right. So here's kind of like the first part is making sure that we have a certain minimum number of bars that's defining this run here. But it's not this first run, it also includes the pullback as well, right? This is just counting bars there, making sure there's X number of bars below our EMA, right? So again, if you want this first run here to be longer, then you would want to increase this count here, right? Because again, this count does include the double pullback part. So, all right. All right. So, so there's one component. Now let's identify. Here's the real key to this question: is identifying this 2-leg pullback, right? So again, these zigzag indicators don't tell you, when these points are locked in here, and they don't output any kind of thing to say, oh yeah, we had an actual higher low point here from the previous low point. So we have to use a swing indicator to do that, right? So again, this is the swing highs and lows indicator. And you can see the settings I'm using, so I didn't go over this previously, is I'm using a swing strength of 3 there. That's the key thing. And I knocked the number of swings down to 2. That way we have a faster response time, right? So these points here, these swing points, the swing highs and lows are identified a lot faster here by knocking this down to 2. So, all right, so 2 and 3 there. Yeah, so to identify that we have a 2-leg, right, this swing indicator here, right, we need the plot here to step up, right? So when it steps up, we know that we have the next leg of the pullback, right? So this plot here to this swing point tells us, okay, here's our first leg. And then once our second leg starts, it's starting to develop, then the swing lows will step up, right? That plot will step up. So let's identify that stepping there. And again, comparison solver, right? We're comparing this plot, right, 1 bar ago, to this plot, which would be the current bar. So let's see here. So this would be swing high or low stepping there. There. All right, so I'm going to connect that in. So input A and input B are going to be, right, the swing highs and lows indicator, so you can read these plots here, right? The swing lows, right, and so if it's for a long, and I'll have an example, but if it's for a long, then we want the swing highs to be stepping down. There. All right, so let's plug in our indicator. So shark indicators, there it is, swing highs and lows. And again, let's put in those reduced settings there, you know. So I'm knocking the double tops, double bottoms down. I'm not sure if that's actually necessary, but I just have a habit of doing that just in case. So, let's see here. All right, so we're using the bottoms to identify a short signal, right? So when the bottoms step up, right, that's our two-legged pullback to the EMA for a short. So we're using the widest bottom plot. So these are the widest bottoms plots here for a short. So that means we'll be using the widest tops. Sorry, I got that backwards. There we go. So the widest bottoms for short signals, and we're using the tops for long signals. All right. And so now we're going to set that up in B again here. So let's go here, swing highs and lows. All right, adjust those settings. And tops is longs, bottoms is shorts. Plug that in. Now input B needs to be 1 bar ago. So we're going to increase the displacement to 1, right? So that takes the value 1 bar ago, shifts it forward. So now we can compare, right, input A to input B on the same bar there, right? So this effectively using the displacement is saying, okay, look back 1 bar. So we want to get the value for input B to be 1 bar back. And so now the output here is when the low points, when the swing lows step up, we want a short signal. So for a short, right, the swing highs and lows is actually going to be greater than. So we're going to reverse these conditions here. If we hit apply, and do I have that connected in? I do. And yep, you know what? Let's reload the chart here. There we go. All right, great. So when the swing highs, right, when it steps down, right, so our highs went from there down to there, right? We're getting a long output because again, you know, if we reverse this condition here, so when the market is above the EMA, right, and then it does a two-legged step down, right, what's going to happen is, right, these high points are going to step down. And so we're getting a long output there. And then when the low points step up, we're getting a short output, right? Because we want that two-legged stepping up in preparation for the market to pull back and hit our moving average there, right? So there we go. Okay, so there's our stepping. All right, so now let's move this back here. All right, so we have the first part is making sure we have, a minimum number of bars, creating this whole trend run away from the EMA and then the pullback there. And now we have our basically our two-leg identifier here. And so now we can start combining things like so. There. All right. Okay. So there we go. So we have a minimum of 8 bars, defining this pattern. And then we actually have the two-leg return or pullback identified there. Right. Now, this bar doesn't actually touch the EMA. So we need to take this signal and extend it forward in time until a bar actually touches, right? And so we don't know how many bars this might take, right? So, although practically speaking, with this fast-moving EMA, right, this is going to happen very quickly here, But if you do use a slower moving average, right, this could take several bars for that to happen. So what we're going to do is, I think the proper way to do this is to use a toggle node, right? So the toggle node is going to be a little more generic, right? In that the toggle node will take that signal and it'll carry it forward as long as necessary for the market to, pull back to the EMA, right? Or if the market, say, crosses our low point here, right, then bingo, that two-legged pullback has now been violated there. So we can turn the toggle node off, and as we can see, the toggle node is actually turned on right now, and it's been turned on way back here. Let's go all the way back here. Let's see, what do we have here? Yeah, so I'm just kind of analyzing this. Let's see here. So we do. Yeah, so we're going to need some more conditions here. And let's see here. Oh, yeah. So one thing that would fix this, so we can see we have the toggle node turns on, right? Because we have this swing low, and actually, no, that's stepping down. Oh, yeah, it looks like we had a low point there and a low point there. Unfortunately, we don't have everything plotting out here. So right, because NinjaTrader doesn't plot like the first 20 bars there. So we're missing, this portion here. But let's see here. That steps down. Yeah, it just looks like we're just kind of getting some indicator garbage here at the very beginning, right? Before all the indicators kind of start outputting, valid information here, right? A lot of indicators need, X number of bars before they start putting out, good information here. Yeah, so I can see actually when the swing lows steps down, we're getting a short, but then swing lows step up, we're getting a short, swing lows step up. Yeah, it's kind of weird. So anyways, yeah, so we have a bunch of, garbage here from the indicators initializing themselves that turn the toggle node on way back here. All right, so yeah, we'll just have to ignore that there. So I was hoping it would kind of make sense here and we could explain what's going on, but yeah, sometimes that doesn't always happen. All right, there's where we're working. All right, let's go back here. Let's see here. So back to the toggle node. So, right. So I'm going to use a toggle node here. However, because this EMA does hug price so quickly, right, that once we do actually get, right, so I'm going to look at this AND node here, right, so once we do get this output here that says, all right, we have, a minimum of 8 bars in this pattern, and here's the second leg of our pullback. Really, at this point, price is going to touch the EMA within the next couple of bars, within the next bar or two. So the toggle node might be, realistically for this kind of condition, might be overkill. I probably could just use something like a signal extender and just extend, right, this point here, the beginning of our 2-leg pullback. I could probably just extend that for a couple of bars and call it good, to keep it simple here. But if anybody takes this and starts playing around with different moving averages, and so forth, maybe making some slower, longer period, slower moving averages, or maybe an SMA, that doesn't hug price so quickly, right? Then this pullback part here, probably will require some extra bars there. So I'm just going to kind of stick with the toggle node here, just for good measure. So, all right. Let's see here. So this toggle node. All right. So we need to turn this toggle node off here, right? Because right now it's on and it's stuck on, right? So that's the one thing about the toggle node is you do need to use the resets here, typically, to turn this toggle node off when appropriate. And so the one thing that should turn the toggle node off is any bar that's touching the EMA, well, you're basically either that's the beginning of the pattern, so the toggle node should definitely be turned off right here as this leg is developing. But also, once we get, if we get a 2-leg pullback, even if it's a 1-leg pullback, right, whenever price touches that EMA, right, basically this whole pattern is done with. It's done and over. So let's let's see here. So I'm going to use a crossover. Yeah, I'm going to use a crossover solver here. So so whenever the high prices cross that EMA, right, so here basically let's see here. Whenever the high prices cross down, I'm going to generate a short, right? And vice versa. If the low prices, right? So if we're looking at a possible long bounce, then when the low prices cross above, all right, so like right here, right? These low prices are crossing above the EMA. Well, that's the beginning of a potential new pattern setting up, right? So we have a trend run up, and so as the low prices cross up, right, that's the beginning of a possible long bounce. And so that should be turning off the toggle node here, if a long pattern has been identified there. All right, so the crossovers here, we're going to check to see if the lows cross up or if the highs cross down, right? Cross over EMA 21. All right, so again, input A is going to be prices. So if it's long, that's the low price, shorts, high price, and input B's are EMA. So let's open this up and there's our EMA 21 period. And let's see here. Yeah, so there we go, right? So we can see this short signal here. We can use this cross down of the high prices to turn off that toggle node there. So let's connect up our toggle node there. Let's put this back here so we can see it. There, shrink it up a little bit. So I'm going to connect this into the reset there. And on the toggle nodes, right, so right now the shorts, right, are on with the toggle node, right? The shorts are on. And so on the reset here, right, the on signal, the shorts are on. So if a short comes into the reset, right, so remember this guy right here, right, there's a short signal right there. So when this short signal comes in, I'm going to use that short to turn off the shorts of the toggle node here. So go to the toggle node. So reset on signal. I'm going to set it to force off. And bingo. There, it was turned off. Actually, it was turned off a long time ago. So yeah, it was turned off way back there. So, oops. No, excuse me. Sorry, I didn't hit the mute microphone. Yeah, give me a moment here to clear my throat. Okay, I'm back. Now, so yeah, so right, so far, right. So remember let's look at the AND node. Right, so the AND node is what's feeding a signal into the toggle node, right? And so it's right there. Right, so again, that's identifying the second leg there. So we can actually call this, let's call this the second leg. Yeah, right. So this is identifying that second leg there. And then we're sticking it into the toggle node, you know, to give the market enough time to actually finish its pullback to the EMA there. So looking at the toggle node, right? So there we go. We have this. And now we actually have an output on the bar that touches the EMA. And then when the high prices cross back down, right, the toggle node gets turned back off. So that's perfect. Okay. So we can actually, take this here, take the output from the toggle node and move forward to the next condition, right? So what is the final condition we're looking for? It's to see, is to identify when a bar touches the EMA on this second leg here. So let's build that solver there to identify when the market touches the EMA. Right? And so to do that, we're going to need a comparison solver, right? Oops. Let's drag it back on here. I accidentally clicked on the X there. And there we go. Let's connect that up, right? So what are the conditions of a bar touching a moving average? Well, the high price is going to be above it, and the low price is going to be below it. So when the high is above and the low is below some moving average at the same time, then you know you have a bar touching that moving average. So let's see here. I'm just going to call this bar touch. Yeah. Like so. So input A is going to be set to price. So I'll generate a long output when the high is above and a short output when the low is below. So input B is going to be our EMA. There. There we go. All right. And hopefully you've kind of noticed a pattern here that'll, with so far, like with all of these comparison solvers, even this crossover solver, right, we're typically putting price in input A and then the EMA in input B here, right? So that's very common when you're building systems. Usually, if you're comparing price to some indicator, right, price almost always goes into input A, and then the indicator that you're comparing to goes into input B. Just a little side note there. All right, so here we go, right? So if the bars are below, then we get a short output. But if you notice, all the bars here touching, we get a long and a short. And that's what we want to identify, is the bars that have a long and a short, because those are all the bars touching the EMA. And then if the bars are above, right, we're getting only a long output. So let's isolate these bars here that are touching. And so the next thing we need is another function node. So, and we're going to use the long short modifier here. Connect that in. And so the mode that can identify both long and short is we're going to use the minimum output here, right? So if one of the outputs is 0, right, then with the minimum, if one of the outputs is 0, then your minimum value is 0. So this strips away all the bars that have a short only or a long only, because the opposite side has a value of 0, right? And so on these bars, the minimum value is the long has a value of 1, the short has a value of 1. So the minimum value is 1, so it keeps those bars there. All right, and I always like to name my long short modifiers by whatever the mode is here. So I just put minimum, min in there. So there's our bars that are touching. So now we can take an AND node, connect that in there, and bingo. There is our signal, right? Now, so that works for this condition here. Now, I could not find anywhere on any chart where there might be a 3-legged pullback, right? But in theory, you never know what the market's going to throw at you, right? So it is possible that you could get a 2-legged pullback there, especially if you're using a slower moving average there. So we do need to, so if we do get a 3-legged pullback, then we do need to turn off the toggle node, right? Because the pattern is now invalidated, right? This is only for a 2-leg pullback there. So actually, let me just double check here. Well, actually, no, there's nothing here that says a three-legged pullback violates this pattern here. Yeah, so you know what? We'll just kind of keep it with this here. However, if let's say a three-legged pullback does violate, is this signal here, then what you would need to do here is, I guess I can talk about this in theory. I can't actually prove that my logic is sound because I don't have an example on the chart to actually work with to validate things. But what you can do is, let's see here. So remember, right, this solver here is identifying when the swing lows are stepping up, right? It gives us this short. So this says, okay, here's our second leg. And so if we get a third leg, then we're going to have another short signal, right, shortly after. So I guess, yeah, I guess we could pretend here, just pretend like this swing low here is actually a third leg. So, we have to pretend that this is a higher low, right? So we have a higher low and pretend this is a higher low. So that would mean that we have a third leg started on the pullback to the EMA here, again, using our imagination here. So what we could do is take this and with a signal counter, and all right, let me just kind of move some of this out of the way. There we go. Yeah, so we could feed that into a signal counter there and say, okay, you know what, if we get two, right, if we get two of these steps, then that means a third leg is developing here, right? And so we kind of need an extended look back period, right? Because we don't know how long these legs are going to take. As we can see that usually this stepping back to the moving average there is pretty quick. So you do kind of have to guess, like, okay, how many bars could it take? And I guess let's go for 10. This should be good enough, right? And I don't think I'll actually find an example. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Okay, here we go. So good. All right. So we can see this swing low, right? It steps higher, and then it steps higher. So we just have to pretend like our moving average is way up here, right? And we have our zigzags, or yeah, we have the market stepping up towards a moving average way up here, there. So there's our third leg, and we have an output here, right? And so with this output of the third leg can then be fed into the toggle node here. So actually what we need to do is take this with an OR node, right? So we have two reset conditions now, right? So actually it's we'll call this the third leg, right? So this signal counter here is identifying that third leg there. So if we get a third leg, or as this guy is doing, if the price crosses the EMA, right, that's a violation there, right? So whatever could violate this pattern, right, we're feeding it into an OR node, and then that OR node gets fed into the reset there, right? And that'll turn the toggle node off. And once that toggle node is turned off, then when we do get a bar touch, nothing happens. We get no signal, right? So let's see here. Let's call this toggle node. There. All right, yeah, so this toggle node is identifying the second leg. But then if we get a third leg, right, it's going into the reset, and turning off the 2-leg, because we're no longer in a 2-leg, we're now in a 3-leg pullback there, right? So just, yeah, as an example, well, actually, since I already have this built, I'm pretty sure this should work properly here. Yeah, so I'll just go ahead and leave it in there. Yep. And yeah, let me just kind of organize this here a little bit. There. All right. So any other kind of market condition here that violates this 2-leg pullback here, right? You would just plug it into this, invalid reset or node, right? And then that connects into the reset there and turns off the toggle node. So one thing to keep in mind is that all the signals, well, the 2 signals right now going into this reset here, it is a short here, right? So those signals here have to be shorts to invalidate a potential short bounce signal, right? And then long signals here would invalidate a potential, yeah, I don't actually have a long bounce pattern here, but long signals are what turn off the toggle node for a possible 2-legged long bounce, right? So yeah, so these guys here are producing a short to turn off the toggle node when a potential short setup is occurring there, right? So you have to make sure that, however, whatever kind of market condition would invalidate your setup, it has to be producing a short output as identifying that invalidation pattern here. Okay, so let's see here. All right, let's go back here. Oops. Yeah, there, move that over there. All right, so that, I think, yeah, we've made really good progress. We're almost all the way there, if not finished. So the next step is to start scanning through the chart and see if there's any kind of false positive signals there. So let's go back to the beginning and look at that. Let's see here, all kinds. Make sure I'm connected into the right spot. Yep. And all right, so we have a 2-leg step up, and all right, yeah, so we need to find a way to make sure that, right, the market hasn't crossed our EMA before these low points step higher. Let's see here. All right, yeah, so that kind of goes back here. Yeah, back to this, back here. Let's see here. All right. So we need to find another condition here. Yeah, that makes sure we don't have a swing point higher. And All right, so uh, yeah, so what I'm gonna do is when we have a swing low here, make sure that the swing lows are below the. Actually, no, we're gonna make sure that the swing highs are also below the EMA for possible short bounces. So let's see here. Yeah, let me go back and oh, look at that. Okay, cool. We do actually have a long here to work with. Yeah. All right. So we're going to need to make sure that this high point is also below that swing low. Here. Let's see here. You know what? Maybe this is the problem. Let me just take this look back. Reduce it down to 8. There. And let's go back here. No, that didn't fix it. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to make sure that this high point here, the swing high, is also below the EMA here as well. So let's see here. So I'm gonna need another toggle node here. And let's see here. All right, so I'm going to compare, right, the swing highs and lows indicator. So I'm going to compare the swing highs to the EMA, make sure the swing highs are lower, and then the swing lows need to be above the EMA, right? So, yeah, let's go back here. Where was it? There we go. Oops. Let's see here. Yeah, so there we go. I think it was right here. We had a long signal here. Right, so the swing lows are going to be above the EMA there. So, yeah, so let's create another comparison solver here. And actually, add a comparison solver there, connect that in. All right. So the swing lows need to be above the EMA for a long, and the swing highs need to be below the EMA for a short. All right. So let's see. So this time input A is actually going to be our swing indicator here. Let's open that up and go into the Shark indicators folder. And there we go, swing highs and lows. And again, adjust our settings like so. So this time we're using the tops here to validate short bounces, and we're using the bottoms to validate a long signal. All right. And we're going to compare that to the EMA. There we go, 21. Oops. 21 period. There. And And, oh. Okay, let's look at that. All right, so next we need to go into the comparison rules here. So we can see here it's not quite set up here, quite right. So when the, what is it? When the swing lows here are above the EMA. Actually, no, that is correct, isn't it? Yeah, actually, this is all correct. Yeah. Zoom in there a little bit. So, yeah, so when that swing low is below the EMA, right? Remember, it starts plotting right there. There we go. We get a short output. Okay, yeah, so that's good. So maybe I just connect that in there. Let's see what happens here. May not actually need that toggle load. All right, let's go back here where we had those erroneous signals. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so all of those erroneous signals are now cleared out. Yep. All right, so if we disconnect this guy again, right? Yeah, there was our second leg, second leg being identified there, but of course we had a swing high on the wrong side of the market there. So yeah, so we'll connect that in. There we go. All right. But also let's go back here. All right. So yeah, so this signal here was killed here by this condition. Disconnect it. Oh, maybe not. All right, let's reload our chart here. Yeah, okay, it was killed. Oh, that's right. So, yeah, what did it here was, remember, I took the signal counter and I changed the look back period. I knocked that down by 1. So, sorry, let's increase that to 9. There we go. So it was my change to the signal counter, changing that look back period is what did it. There. Okay. There. Yeah. So there's our second leg, setting up. And let me go back here where we had that long. Let's see. Yeah, so we have this move higher and then a pullback, and it didn't cross the EMA, right? Steps higher, and there's our second leg. And so this one bar here, this one bar here touches, but also this one bar here takes our swing, locks in our swing highs here, and our swing highs step down. So why don't we have a long signal there anymore? All right. Yeah. So our signal counter, right, and our lows and highs being one tick above the EMA. That's good. Let's check that out. Oh, yeah, here's the problem. Okay, here's the problem. Yeah, so that low point itself is actually above the EMA, but when the swings highs plots, right, it plots a few bars later, and so now the EMA is now above the swing low plots here. So actually what we need to do is compare, right, that swing low to several bars ago to the EMA, right? We need to compare this plot to the EMA way back here. So let's make that adjustment here. So we're going to change the displacement to 3. And there we have it. All right, so there's, yes, there we have it. Let's see if we get, no, we still don't, because, yes. So we're okay there, but once we get to this bar here, then the swing low, now the EMA is above that swing low. All right, so we need, yeah, so, okay, here's where that toggle node is going to come into place here. Right. So let's see here. Oh, so I'm going to use a little bit of programming notations here. So just to note that for the EMA, right, we're using the displacement of 3. So we're looking at the value of that EMA 3 bars ago. Right, so we're taking the current swing high and low price value and comparing it to the EMA 3 bars ago, right, to make sure that that low point there is above the EMA there. And let's see here. So let's plug that into a toggle node. All right. And let's see. So we do need something to turn this toggle node off, right? As we can see, the toggle node stays on forever. Here. Yeah, let's see here. So if a bar touches the EMA, that's something that definitely should be turning off this toggle node, right? So again, this toggle node here is simply to take the condition that this low point is above the EMA and hold on to that condition, right, until this second leg can develop there. So yeah, here, let me grab this bar touch. There we go. I'll grab that. And oh, also I need this long short modifier. Copy that. I'll paste it back here. There we go. So that will turn off the toggle node. And with the toggle node, I now need to go into the reset here and say, okay, you know what? When we get a signal coming in, let's force it off. There we go. Yeah, so looking at this toggle node, it actually gets turned off before, right, the highs step down. So this toggle node is turned off before this second leg is being detected, right? So I need to, let's see here. Yeah, and that can happen sometimes when you have a single bar here, right? So this bar, right, which is our signal bar, is actually multiple, it has multiple roles, right? So this bar here also locks in that high point. So this bar here defines that this high points are stepping down, so that this bar here is our second leg of the pullback. It's also the signal bar. Yeah, and it's the signal bar and that's touching here. So sometimes when this happens here, what we need to do is delay our bar touch here by 1 bar. So we need to reset this toggle node 1 bar later. So to do that, I'm going to grab a look back node here. In this look back node, we're going to use this displacement function here. So this is doing a 1 bar displacement, or in other words, a 1 bar delay. So if I connect that in to the result node, right? So there's the bar touch, but we get the signal 1 bar later. So actually we have 2 bars here touching. So we have 2 outputs here, 2 signals, but we can see they're shifted forward in time. So now let's connect into that. So now our toggle node it's on when the high points step down. Yeah, all right. So now let's connect that in, connect that in. There we go. So now we fixed the problem with this long signal disappearing there. There. Let's go back here. All right, there's our short. And actually, well, actually, sorry. Yeah, hold on, guys. So if you're paying attention, right, my result node's connected into the second leg AND node. So that's not the actual signal, right? The signal is back here, right, when a bar touches, right? So when that bar touches, let's actually connect that in. There we go. Yeah, so there's our proper signal. The bar is touching there. There's our short. And there, our bar is touching. All right, and look at that. Actually, yeah. So we actually have 2 bars touching. So sometimes, sometimes that'll happen. All right, so if you want 1 clean signal there, we can fix that by adding a signal blocker. Connect that in. There we go. All right, so there's 1 clean signal there. All right, there's our short, there's our long. And let's go back to the beginning of the chart. And yeah, there's no signals here. So we're good. All right, so let's continue on looking for any kind of invalid signals here. Let's see here. So actually this is, the low points are still stepping down. So yeah, lows are still stepping down. Let's see. So that looks like a 2-leg step up. What happened here? And oh yeah, so price actually touched that EMA. Yeah, it looks like price touched it, so it invalidated that two-leg pullback here. Let's check this here. So we have a bar touch here, and actually no, that didn't touch. Yeah, so let's find out why this did not generate a signal right there. All right, so this is making sure that we have at least 8 bars in this run and pullback. So that is good. Oh, there we go. Wait. Yeah, 9 bar. Oh, okay. Yeah. So here we go. So this bar here, it didn't touch, but it also is within 1 tick of the EMA. Yeah. So when we're looking at this, right? So remember we had this, subjective condition here where the highs have to be 1 tick below the EMA here, right? And so that, yeah, even though that bar didn't touch, it's within 1 tick. And so our signal counter, right, we need at least 8 bars. And we gave an allowance for 1 bar there. But when that actually touches there, yeah, it turns off. Yeah, so that's why. So again, if this 1 tick rule here, if you want to get rid of that, again, you can just go into the comparison rules and we can get rid of that 1 tick requirement there. And there we go. So now we have a signal on the bar that actually touches. So if we look at this, yep, there we go. Let's zoom out here a little bit. Right, and so now if we look at this, there's our short signal right there. So, right, yeah. All right, so anyways, I'm gonna go put that 1 tick back in there. There. All right, signal gone. And let's continue looking through the chart. That looks close, but I think that actually made a higher high. So, yeah. Or at least that made a duplicate high. So it didn't actually step down. And so we don't actually have a way to identify that this is a second leg here. Yeah. So, so let me just kind of point out, right, that technically we don't actually have an indicator giving us exactly what we're wanting to identify, right? And exactly what we want to identify is when do we get, a leg started? When does a zigzag leg actually start here, right? So we have the swing highs and lows, right? So it's plots when that high point's locked in, right? And then once that high point occurs. Actually, oh, it did step higher. Yeah, there we go. All right, yeah, so I can see it stepped one tick slightly higher. So that's a higher high. Okay, here. But back to the point I was making here, which is we're using the swing highs and lows, and when the value changes, then we know a high point has developed or a low point's developed. But if we get a double top or a double bottom, we don't have a way to identify because we don't have a zigzag indicator that actually outputs specifically that, hey, on this bar, a high point was locked in or developed. And then, on this bar, a low point was locked in. That's exactly what we need from the indicator, from a zigzag indicator, is to actually tell us that, hey, a low point was just developed, occurred, and was locked in. A high point occurred, locked in on this bar and this bar here. So since we don't have that, we're using, the swing highs and lows and identifying when it's stepping up or stepping down, right? And that tells us when a low point or high point has occurred there. Yeah. All right, let's continue looking through here. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, again, this double-legged pullback is pretty darn rare to find out there. So, all right. So with that, gentlemen, I think we are done with this question. Let's see here. Yeah, so let's, I guess let's take a moment here to kind of summarize what's going on here. All right. So this first AND node is doing multiple tasks. So let's go back to this short bounce here. All right. So this first part up here, right, because we're using a signal counter, we're making sure that this pattern lasts for at least 8 bars, and that could be short, so if you want a fairly long, trend run before the pullback, right, then you might want to increase to maybe 16 bars, something like that, right? So that's kind of what this is trying to do. It's trying to identify that we do have somewhat of a long run here at the beginning, and then the pullback, right? So this trend run plus the pullback has to last at least for 16 bars, or however many bars you want there. So, so I just set 8 as a minimum there, right? So what that means is you'll need these longer runs versus these shorter ones, right? So we could eliminate these kind of shorter ones here by increasing the number of bars required here. Okay. This, all right, this second component here is ensuring that this low point is above the EMA. So for example, right, so we can see we have a low point stepping up, but this high point obviously is above. So we want to make sure that the logic here doesn't misinterpret that, oh, look, here, this stepped up, so we this must be the second leg and we're good to go. Right? And that actually happened way back here. Yeah, so we had this really kind of long price zigzag here. And so what happened was this leg down, it lasted for 8 bars underneath, and so we had a false positive of of this being identified as the second leg, because obviously this high point here was on the wrong side of the market, right? Or on the wrong side of the EMA, sorry. So we're making sure that the high points here are below that EMA, so we don't get that false positive there. And so actually, if I connect that in there, right? So if I disconnect this, bingo, there we go, right? So again, remember the signal counters only needs 8 bars. So if we lengthen this, that in itself would potentially kind of get rid of this false positive here, because we do have 8 bars, underneath the EMA there. So that's one fix, is we could increase the counting of the number of bars underneath the EMA or above there. But this is kind of like double insurance here, making sure that high point is also underneath the EMA, right? So if this really is the second leg of the pullback, well, this high point, right, also needs to be below the EMA. So that's what this is doing. Connect that in there. And then this guy is identifying when the low points step up, so we know we have our second leg there. Right, let's connect that in. Right, so bingo, the low stepped up. So that tells us, a second leg here started in combination with the other conditions. Make sure that the entire pattern here is below the EMA or above the EMA. So there's our second leg there. And so once we get our second leg identified here, which is not here, let's go back. There. Yeah. All right, so there's our low point stepping up with that short. And so once that's identified, there, let's connect that in, right? So once we get that second leg identified, right, and the whole zigzag pattern is below the EMA, then we feed that into a toggle node here, right? So the toggle node holds on to that second leg condition until the market can actually go and touch that EMA for that possible bounce signal there, right? And so this part, so these solvers here is what actually identifies when the market touches the EMA. So let's connect that in, right? And so there we go. There's the bar that actually touches. So that bar doesn't actually touch. It's like within a fraction of a tick of our EMA, but it's not actually touching. So that's the bar that touches there. All right. And then we just have a signal blocker here to kind of clean things up, because sometimes going back there we go. Sometimes you might get 2 bars touching our EMA and you'll get a double signal. So to get rid of that, there we go, signal blocker. And there we have it. So now we're just down to 1 signal there. So, all right, so that's kind of a summary there of what each component here of the system's doing here. Okay, so with that, let me see if there's any questions on this, any follow-up questions on this topic here. Okay, yeah, so here we go. So here's Paul is adding adding to his question here. So he's asking, so essentially, what happens if a bar doesn't actually touch, right? But a bar comes close to the EMA and then bounces off. So is there a way to identify a range that the bar has to get within, say like 1 point? For example here, let's see. Yeah, again, I don't think I actually have anything on the chart, but we'll just have to imagine, what if, what if this was, what if this was our second leg, right? And so what if price gets within a point or two of the EMA, and then reverses, can we add that to that? And yeah, we actually can. So that would be added back here, right? So remember, this toggle node is telling us, hey, we got our second leg, and it's this bar touch here that says, okay, boom, that's our signal. So we just need to make another condition here, create another solver here that says, hey, identify when price gets within a certain range, and then generate the signal there, right? And let's see, let me try and find a spot to work with. Let's see if I can do that. All right, yeah. I'm going to use this guy right here. Right here, right? So, yeah, so the high point gets, look, hopefully that high point got within a point of their EMA, right? And then price reversed away there. So, yeah, so let's see here. I'll work up top here. So we're going to add a comparison solver. And let's see, input A, and we're going to be comparing price, right, to the EMA to do this. $21, right? Let's see here. So if it's a long price, then if the low of the bar gets within a point, that's close enough. So for a long bounce, a long signal bounce, right, we're checking to see if the low of the bar gets close enough. And so for a short, it's going to be the high price of the bar. And in the comparison here, let's see here. So if the low is, so if the low is less than or equal to the EMA plus 1 point, like so. And so for a short, if the high is greater than or equal to the EMA, right, EMA minus 1 point. And let's hit apply. And this guy here is more than a point away. Yeah, so we would have a short output on this bar if that high point got within a point. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find something, a good example here. Here we go. Actually, no, that touches. And let's see. I think this one here, let's see if that touches. Yeah, so that bar is not touching. But if we look at this, right, there we go. Yeah, so that high point's within 1 point of the EMA there. And so I'm just kind of analyzing the outputs here and everything. Yeah, so the EMA is half a tick away from the high point there. So what we could do is, let me actually name this here. There. Right, so either the low is 1 point right away from the EMA or the high point is. And so what we could do is disconnect that and connect that in. And right, yeah, so here we can see we actually have a bar touching, right? And we have an output, a bar touching, and that bar is not touching, but we still get an output there. So if we go back here, right, what'll happen is, well, that bar didn't get, didn't actually touch, but it will generate a signal there a little early, before the bar actually touches. So let's look at that. Yeah. Right. So there we go. So you could use either requirement. So you can say, all right, the bar actually has to touch, or the bar has to come within 1 point. Actually, yeah, you know what? There. All right, so yeah, this is requiring that the lower the high is within 1 point of the EMA. Yeah, call it good. There. Yeah, and there we go. So now we get our signal a little early, 1 bar early there. So. Yep. Okay, so yeah, that was all right. So there's a follow-up question from Paul on this, and let's see what else is in the Q&A window here. Let's see. No, all right. I don't see any questions on this topic here, but the other questions in the Q&A are new ones here. So let's see here. All right. So yeah, we are done with this topic. So. All right. So let's move on here to some new questions. Let's see here. All right, so I think it's Aditya is asking, can I use calculate on bar close for entry and calculate on tick for exit? The short answer is no. That is a NinjaTrader limitation. you cannot mix and match. So, right, as you can see, so this is for entry and exit logic. Well, so I guess you're talking about using this entry and exit logic within Blackbird, but it doesn't matter, right? You can see that with all your indicators, in the setup, you only have one calculate mode there, so I don't know how you would set up, two calculate modes there. All right, that's just, yeah. So, so unless, I would say, go to NinjaTrader support, and, really this is a NinjaTrader question here. So again, the short answer here is, with a strategy, they only have one calculate setting here. You can't put in two different calculate modes there. So, all right, so that was Aditya's question there. And Three, all right, Three's got a couple of questions for me. All right, so Three's asking, is there a way to identify the first thing is you have to identify the widest swing high and low. So I do actually have the swing indicator on here. So what's the widest swing high and swing low on the chart, and then can we plot the open and close prices that made the widest swing high and swing low? There's a flaw here in your question. As you can see, it takes multiple bars to make a swing high and a swing low. So there is no single bar that is the widest swing high and swing low. So I need to have you kind of better phrase your question here, because a single bar does not define a swing low and a swing high at the same time, right? It takes price moving up and moving down, which encompasses multiple bars here. I need a better definition here of how you're getting one bar to define the widest swing high and swing low. So ultimately Three wants to use the bar setup prices indicator and grab the open and close prices from a bar that has something to do with the widest swing points here. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So Three is trying to, so get the, okay. And so Three's trying to get the open and close prices here using the Bloodhound setup bar prices indicator. Yeah, so for the swing low, get the open and high low prices. For the swing high, get the open and close prices there to plot from that indicator. Yeah, and then the next element is how far back on the chart are you willing to look, right? Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, okay, yeah, so that's the next thing I kind of need to know. I'm still not sure how I would do this, but I do know that, let's say on this chart, I can see here, right there, that looks like the widest on this chart so far, right? But obviously, this widest condition between the high and low points, how far forward do you carry that in time? I'm still thinking about this. Yeah, for now, I'm going to say no. You know, I, I, I don't understand the full context, but it seems like, yeah, when you're trying to identify, the widest of something, right, you do have to have a limited, look back period, the widest going back how far. But then you also, every time you do have a swing high and a swing low, you have to measure that distance and then store it in a variable, right? But also store the location at which that measurement was taken. And then when a new point, when a new swing point is developed, right, you check that measurement again. So, right, so let's see here. So we go from right here to here to here. So you check that, and now a new swing high point. So now you check again, and then we get a new low point, and you measure again, right? So on and so forth. So you're constantly measuring, and you have to stick these values into a variable, and so that way you're getting rid of all the smaller measurements, and you're keeping the largest, and but also you need to also store the location of where was this widest measurement taken. Oh, well, it's taken back here to here, and therefore carry this forward. And so, yeah, that level of taking some kind of measurement, storing it, in a variable, and also storing the price values, right? Storing either the close of the open, based on the location of where this measurement was taken. That is what custom indicators do. Bloodhound, Bloodhound doesn't store values. That's not its job. Its job is to utilize indicators that do that custom level of calculations, that you're wanting to do there. Yeah. So the now the swing highs and lows indicator kind of does that for you, in that, let's add, I'll need to add another indicator here. Actually, no, I'll just change the settings here of what's on the chart. So the swing highs and lows has this look back period. So if I increase this to 10, like so, actually, no, you know what? I should add a new one, so that way we can compare the two here. All right, so let's set this to 10, and we'll also knock down the strength as well, and make sure the double bottoms, double tops matches there. And let's overlay these. All right, so there we go. So with a look back of 10, it is keeping track of the highest high and the lowest low, which is not doing exactly what you're wanting to do, right? You want to sounds like you want to take a measurement, and find out, what was the widest measurement there. Yeah, so this isn't quite the same. Kind of similar there. Yeah, and so if we look at this as these highs and lows spread apart, ultimately, look right here. Here's kind of the widest, right, point here. There. Right, so as these lows are stepping down faster than the highs are, right, there we go. So this is our widest point looking back at 10 swing points, right? Looking back at the last 10 swing points there. So, yeah. Yeah, so I think the answer to your question would be no. Yeah, so 3 is saying, yeah, using comparison solvers, right. That is actually the perfect place to start But again, the comparison solvers don't store values into a variable. So, but also the comparison solver isn't measuring the distance there. So the way you phrase the question, you need to measure that distance in points or ticks, and then store it in a variable, and then measure the next swing high to swing low, right? Measure that distance and store that into a variable and say, okay, which one of these is wider? And so therefore, which open and which closing price do I still utilize based on which one's wider? So, right, and that all that custom math and logic is is the whole purpose of custom indicators. So, yeah, yeah. All right. So I think, yeah, I think we're done with these questions. Let's see, where are we at? All right, we're at the 2 hour mark. Holy smokes, answering this question here certainly took a long time. This two-leg pullback. Let's see here. All right. Well, we don't have too many people in here in the room, so I'll give you guys another minute or two to see if there's any other, hopefully, simple questions here I can answer. But otherwise, I'll close up shop here. That way I can, give my voice a rest here, because I don't want this cold to get the idea that I can make a second comeback, right? So gentlemen, I'll give you another minute here to see if there's any other kind of other simple answers I can ask. Otherwise I'll close up shop. All right, gentlemen, I don't see anything coming up here on the Q&A window, so I think we're done for today. All right, so tomorrow we will finish up today's question here in Blackbird and demonstrate how to set up the how to plug this into Blackbird, and then also set up the stop entry orders here. Yeah. So. Yeah, one thing to note here. So, rule number 3 here, condition number 3 here. There's two ways we could have handled this. We could have built an exit signal in Bloodhound so that if the bar does completely close on the other side of the moving average, then generate an exit signal, right, to cancel the entry order. But we can actually do that in Blackbird. So, right, Blackbird itself has a very kind of simplistic kind of comparison solver type of trigger that we can, that Blackbird has. So we can utilize a trigger here to identify, if a candle closes on the opposite side, and then cancel that entry order. So, yeah. All right, gentlemen. If I don't see you tomorrow, then have a good weekend, and I'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye, guys.